Hi, today we're talking about the little spat that's brewing between Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin. I'm gonna explain why Elon Musk started tweeting in Russian. I'm gonna explain why the Russian parliament, the Duma, banned Starlink. I'm gonna tell you why it's important, what the possible consequences are for Starlink, for Elon Musk, and in general for the relationships between governments, the dictatorship governments and the oligarchy governments that we have here in the Western world. Hey, thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time. Please hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps me. And whenever you have a question, I read and answer all of your comments. So first, let's do a backstory. In January, Putin has had to deal with a few embarrassments. Number one is he tried to poison his political opponent, Alexei Navalny, and he failed. After that, a leaked phone call proved that this was ordered by the basically ex-KGB. Alexei Navalny went to Germany and was able to cure himself. And when everybody was telling him to stay away from Russia, he decided to fly back to Russia. As he was landing on the airport, he got arrested. While he was getting arrested, a video uploaded on YouTube, a 2-hour video, showed how Vladimir Putin has built basically a mini country coast of the Black Sea with its own huge, amazing palace worth about $1.5 billion, with its own no-fly zone, with its own border control. So this was January for Putin, and while this happened, the Russian Duma passed a law banning citizens from using Starlink satellite. Initially, if you get caught, you get a fine, and later on, in Russia, you get disappeared, you go to jail, and nobody ever sees from you again. At the same time, Elon Musk started tweeting in Russian, inviting Vladimir Putin for an interview on the new Clubhouse app. It took a few days for the Russian representatives to respond, and all they said basically, we'll think about it. I can tell you right now what the answer will be. Clubhouse is an iPhone-only app, and Putin will respond that he uses an Android phone. That interview is never happening. The whole goal of Elon Musk was to try to troll Vladimir Putin about banning Starlink. It will never happen. I don't know why the mainstream media hasn't caught on to the reasoning why Elon Musk started tweeting in Russian, but this is the reason. He wanted to expose Vladimir Putin for banning Starlink. It's not gonna work, but A for effort. Let's also backtrack to what Elon Musk has been doing in January. He basically increased Starlink's constellation to over 1,000 satellites, and he keeps launching 60 satellites every 2 weeks. He released the Starlink beta version in a limited capacity last year, at the end of last year, and just a few days ago, they announced it's going to be available worldwide. Anybody on Earth who has $100 a month is able to get satellite internet from Starlink. This is a huge inconvenience for regimes that have restricted the internet access of their citizens. About a month ago, I uploaded a video about the future of Starlink. In that video, I explained why Starlink is basically the best regime change weapon the US has ever had. Effectively disseminating information and effectively disseminating your own propaganda has always been the most effective way for a government to change regimes and win wars. Weapons only submit governments. Having effective propaganda can turn the citizens on your side. And this is why Starlink, by allowing unrestricted access to the worldwide internet, is the biggest weapon the US had. Ironically, that weapon was developed by a South African, but that's a conversation for another day. Now, Russia banned Starlink. That means SpaceX has to obey Russian laws when it comes to providing internet access in Russia. Now, Russia has really no authority over SpaceX and no jurisdiction, but if SpaceX wants to be a good corporate citizen, they would. At the same time, the US government has huge leverage over Elon Musk. And why do I say Elon Musk but not SpaceX? I'll explain right now. The US government has subsidized all of Elon Musk's companies. It has subsidized Tesla. It subsidized Solar City before it became part of Tesla. It has subsidized SpaceX. And it holds the keys to the boring company becoming a successful company where it has to work with local and state government to get permits for digging tunnels. Also, the US government holds the key for Neuralink in regards to the fact that they get to issue approvals and permits for future experiments with Neuralink's technology. Now, that leverage will be exercised. It might take Congress a few months to get over the stimulus check, to get over figuring out who screwed the retail investors in the GameStop saga. But once Congress gets its attention on the Starlink ban from Russia, it will exert that leverage over Elon Musk. What's going to happen is they will either tell him to allow anybody who gets their hands on a Starlink dish to connect to the internet in those countries, regardless of what the local laws are. They might even tell him, don't charge those people anything, just provide them with free internet and we'll pay for it in one way or another, either more subsidies or direct payments. But this is a very important situation for the United States, to be able to have unrestricted internet in countries that currently have basically a huge Chinese wall over their internet, controlling their citizens. Now, the next step is Elon Musk will be between a rock and a hard place, and he will have no choice but to choose the side of the US government, simply because they hold all the power over his companies. In my previous video about the future of Starlink, I explained why Tesla might be used as a hostage in situations like this. What can happen is Teslas will be banned in dictatorship countries that do not want SpaceX to have their internet available. It's very likely that the Chinese gigafactory in Shanghai might get nationalized down the road in a few years. This is not going to be a huge blow to Tesla financially, because Tesla did not really spend any money on the Chinese gigafactory. It was all financed through Chinese bank. But it might cut their production for a little bit, especially if they haven't built up the India factory yet. One more clue why I think this is happening already is the reason why Tesla purchased $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the easiest way to move money around the world quickly, efficiently, and somewhat anonymously. So I believe part of the reason why Tesla bought so much Bitcoin is so they can convert their currencies in countries that are not friendly to the US to Bitcoin, so they can move it out of those countries. I'm not sure that's true, but I have a very high suspicion that this is part of the reasoning why this happened. The Western governments figured out a way to have a perfect regime change weapon in those countries, and that is disseminating their information and their propaganda without any interference from the dictatorship government. Their response will be initially intimidating their own citizens of not using Starlink, just like Russia is doing, finding them and then putting them in jail and then disappearing them. If this doesn't work, we might go into somewhat of a hot war, and that hot war will be expressed in dictatorship countries trying to hack Starlink satellites and starting to enforce bigger and bigger iron curtains between the Eastern world and the Western world, and at the same time starting to shoot down satellites. Now, shooting down satellites is not going to be very effective, because they basically have to shoot 60 satellites every 2 weeks just so they can keep up with SpaceX capability of launching 60 satellites every 2 weeks. And this is with their current capabilities, not to mention when Starship comes along and they're able to launch 180 satellites at a time. For SpaceX, it's very cheap to send Starlink satellites to space, and for those countries, it will be more and more expensive having the capability of shooting down satellites. Now, that doesn't mean there's no risks to SpaceX. When all of its satellites, or the majority of its satellites, are on the same plane, meaning they're all on the same orbit, let's say 300 kilometers from Earth, that means that if you shoot just a few Starlink satellites, basically that whole orbit of 300 kilometers over Earth becomes unusable due to space debris. So SpaceX will have to build good enough satellites that they can maneuver away from space debris. And at the same time, this might cause an issue for future launches, because if you have basically the Earth circled around by a whole bunch of space debris, you might not be able to launch as many rockets as you're used to, simply because your windows will become smaller and smaller, and it will become riskier and riskier. And this is a very, very real possibility that this will happen. Remember, people like Putin and like Xi Jinping from China are not going to just say, okay, you've won, I give up. They will do everything possible to prevent their regimes from changing. And everything possible means shooting down satellites and essentially blocking space for decades to come. I know nobody has talked about this yet. I don't know why. As I suspect, usually with the US media, once the government is ready for it to be talked about, or the media starts making a fuss about it, then Elon Musk will keep tweeting in Russian, and then all of a sudden Congress will start paying attention to it and trying to come up with some kind of a resolution that is on its face good for the American people. But as of right now, nobody's talking about it, but you heard it here first. Again, I'm Nasco from The Great Reset. I hope you enjoyed this. I really appreciate your help. I want to remind you again, it's very important to like and subscribe those videos if you like the content. It really helps my channel, and it helps it where more people can see the content and join our community. Thank you very much. Have a great day.